Joining us now, live from New Hampshire, Trump for President, National Campaign Manager, Corey Lewandowski. Great to have you with us, Corey.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here.
Merry Christmas and fabulous that you're home for the holidays for a while, because I know you've been out like every day. Every time I text you or whatever, you're in Iowa, you're in New Hampshire, you're in South Carolina, you're in Virginia, you're somewhere. So it's good to be home for a few days.
Well, it's great to be in New Hampshire. You know, it's such an important state to us politically, but more important, my family is here. So I have the privilege of spending Christmas with them and see my children, which I don't get to do very often. I was on the road for, I think, 28 straight days. Not that I'm complaining, because I want to make America great again, but it is good to be home for 2 days, and then we'll hit it again hard next week, so I'm excited.
All right, well, it's good to have you home, good to have you in New Hampshire, good to have you with us today. Thank you, Corey, for making time for us. I want to get right to new polls that have come out. What a Christmas present for the Trump for President campaign. Let's start with the CNN poll that just came out about 15 hours ago. Donald Trump, 39%. Ted Cruz, second place, 18%. That's almost the same results as the Fox poll that came out the other day. Reuters had Trump at 37%. Carson, 11.5%. I mean, these are big numbers, Corey, with 13 people in the field. How do you explain it?
Well, they are, and I think what you find is, you know, these GOP establishments and these political pundits who have said time and time again that Donald Trump is not going to be a factor in this race and that this campaign isn't serious are starting to come to the realization that Donald Trump is going to be the GOP nominee. You've got 14, 15, 16 people in the field. Mr. Trump is hovering around 40%, and if you think back about 5 or 6 weeks ago, they said his ceiling was going to be 25%. And there was a story this week in the LA Times which actually said they believe that these polls are under-reporting his success right now. Morning Consult did a lengthy analysis on this, shows Mr. Trump at 42%, but then when they do the live surveys, they say, hey, he doesn't do as well in some of those surveys, but they believe the analysis indicates that he's actually doing significantly better. And so, look, the vision of making America great again and putting America first for a change is something that is resonating with the American public. They're sick of the pandering. They're sick of the all-talk, no-action politicians who say one thing behind closed doors and something else out in the public. They're sick of a failed Washington, D.C. who's getting nothing done. And so they want true leadership, and that's why we see Mr. Trump doing exceptionally well, and I think that's why he's going to be the GOP nominee and ultimately the president.
Well, and I think your numbers are understated. I've been saying that for some time because the number of people that I talk to, I mean, our listeners on our show, from emails, texts, people that call in, you're probably 60, 70%. A lot of people that I talk to whisper to me and say, I'm for Trump. A lot of people just are not comfortable maybe saying it in a public manner. Numbers are dramatically understated.
Well, they are, and here's what the argument now is: well, are people going to show up and turn out to vote on caucus day or on primary day in New Hampshire? Here's what I can tell you: we were in Grand Rapids, Michigan on Monday night. Mm-hmm. We had 9,000 people come out to see Mr. Trump on the Monday of Christmas. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, right? Our crowds, not only are they massive, but they're exceptionally dedicated. We open the doors 2.5 hours early, and there are people who are there 2 hours before the doors are open. So they're spending 6 hours with us so that they can hear Mr. Trump's message live. You're telling me those people who spend 6 hours, let alone their drive to get there, aren't going to take 3 minutes and show up at the ballot booth, right, or 40 minutes to show up at a caucus? I just don't believe that for a second.
Well, I don't either. And, a lot of people saying, well, you don't really have the internal infrastructure, the ground game organization. You definitely have it in New Hampshire. That's where you're from. That's where you live. You have it there. I've talked to, the other day I talked to Sam Clovis, who's your national campaign chairman. He's working in Iowa. I mean, he told me about the enormous staff you have there. So, I just think that's people wishful thinking.
Again, the next narrative is Trump doesn't have a ground game.
Right.
Okay, here's what I say. Just like these pundits have done since the day Mr. Trump announced this campaign, you continue to underestimate our ability to be successful. Just like they said he wouldn't be a factor and he wouldn't run and all these other things that they have been proven wrong time and time and time again. Look, if we are in the exact same position from a numerical perspective as George W. Bush was in 2000 when he was running, and they already coronated him, the next president of the United States, which he went on to become, and that's fantastic. If Jeb Bush was in the same position that Donald Trump is today, the GOP establishment would be begging people to get out of the race, saying that we have to unify behind our nominee, and instead what we have is we have these elitists who want to tell the voters of our country, you shouldn't support Trump. We have to do something to stop him. They don't understand. People are tired of being told what to do from people who actually don't go to work every day. These party bosses, these establishment folks, these elitists, people are tired of this. They want something different, and they want someone who's going to tell them the truth, and that's why they're supporting Donald Trump.
Well, that's because what you've done is you've ignited a movement. And it's not about, you have a fabulous candidate, but it's really the thing that's under it is people are sick and tired of being lied to by the elitist politicians. They feel betrayed. I mean, let's go to the omnibus bill. I mean, you've got to say to yourself, we elected all these Republicans in the midterms, and we end up with the omnibus bill, which is basically increasing spending, increasing the debt, busting all the budget that we had, and then slipping in things like increasing HB2 visas by 250,000 that take jobs away from Americans, depress wages. How does that make any sense?
John, here's what we've just done. We've just added $1.5 or $1.15 trillion to our budget with no offset on it. None. I don't fundamentally understand what the Republican Party in Washington, D.C. is doing, how they think that is a good deal for us. When you've got Speaker Paul Ryan and Barack Obama agreeing on something where, you know what, Paul Ryan says he inherited this deal from John Boehner. It's not good enough anymore. We can't continue to saddle our children and our grandchildren with this enormous debt with no plan in place to fix it. And here's what Mr. Trump has said. Guys, you know what? You took 24 hours to negotiate this deal. Deals take a long time if you're going to get them right. Why aren't we negotiating the next budget deal starting right now? This is the fundamental problem with Washington, D.C. They have no vision, no foresight, no ability to actually think about how this impacts future generations. Speaker Ryan's supposed to be a guy who is going to be looking out for our next generation. He's supposed to be this budget hawk. This does nothing but adds $1 trillion+ to our deficit. Our deficit's now about $21 trillion. The number is so huge, so unfathomable, people can't even understand what it means anymore. This is a terrible budget deal, and you saw just this week Franklin Graham left the Republican Party over this piece of legislation.
Had enough.
Because that is how fed up people are.
Yeah, he's just had enough. And I tell you what, you look at that omnibus thing, I don't know how any conservative can be excited about that. I mean, I look at things, that's a complete joke.
They funded every Syrian refugee coming into the country that was asked for. Every single one. So now we're going to get more refugees in because the money is in place to do this. When do we put America first?
It's a sad situation. And, we went with this new speaker, and, I've said this, I said this from day one. We're going to wish we had John Boehner back by the time this thing is over, because Paul Ryan is he's a chamber puppet. And look, all of these people are so tied to the donor globalist class because they owe them something. That's the other issue.
That's the problem, is Washington, D.C. is so fundamentally broken because the lobbyists and the special interests come in and they give you campaign contributions and they tell you how you're going to vote because everybody wants a special deal. That's the same problem with every other candidate in this race running for president other than Donald Trump. He's self-funding his campaign. He owes nobody nothing. And the only person or persons that he will be accountable to is the American people. So when a lobbyist comes in and says, Mr. President, we've got to fix this because this guy gave you money, he's going to laugh him and throw him out of the office. That's the fundamental difference. And, these Washington special interests, they control these guys like puppets, and they control these super PACs that go and raise tens of millions of dollars from these major donors who control the candidates. That's what's wrong here. And, look, you've got a member of the U.S. Senate who's running for president who didn't even have the courtesy to show up and make a vote on the budget. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. If you don't want to do your job as a U.S. Senator, then please resign your seat and stop taking taxpayer money for a job you're not doing anymore.
I mean, and then this is Senator Marco Rubio we're talking about, and then his rebuttal, I guess, or comment on it was that, well, obviously I was opposed to it because I didn't show up. Either you hit the green button or you hit the red button. Not showing up isn't the answer.
Well, look, you can be opposed to a lot of things, but at the end of the day, right, you are being paid by the taxpayers to do a job, and that job is to show up in Washington, D.C., and represent your constituents to the best of your ability. And I think it's fair to say an individual who has missed, 40% of the votes in the U.S. Senate this year is not doing that. And I understand he wants to be the next president of the United States, but does current performance equate to future performance? Potentially. Does that mean as the president of the United States you decide you don't want to show up anymore? I'm not sure, but do the job that the taxpayers are paying you to do, or you have the opportunity to just resign that seat and go do something else.
Sure. It's real easy, but I think taking taxpayer dollars and not showing up for something that critical is really egregious. Corey, I want to get to the Republican Party of Virginia primary, Super Tuesday, March 1. This is an open primary by statute in Virginia. The Republican Party of Virginia has decided to put in what they call statement of affiliation. So basically, if I show up and I'm somebody that just registered, or I'm an independent or whatever, and I say I would like a Republican ballot, the poll worker has to say to me, well, in order to get a Republican ballot, you have to sign this statement of affiliation, name, address, stating that you're a Republican, cell phone, email. A lot of people find that to be intrusive. I did a big expose on it. I believe it was done for one reason, and that was to stop independents from voting in the primary. A majority of those, I think, are for Trump. So I think it was aimed at a single candidate. Now, the officials at the RPV told me that they cleared this with all of the presidential campaigns, and they said specifically that they sent an email to the Trump campaign and that you guys had no objection. True or false?
Well, that's just not accurate. And let me go on to clarify what they want. So if you're an independent and you want to walk in and you want to vote, as you know, the state of Virginia has no party registration. So anybody can walk in and pull the ballot that they want to. Now, if the state wants to change that through the General Assembly and make it so it's a partisan registration, they're welcome to do that. But what the Republican Party of Virginia right now is asking individuals to do is to sign a pledge that says, not only am I a Republican, but I will support the Republican nominee. And so, look, I think here's what we want to be. I think we want to be more inclusive than exclusive.
Right.
I don't understand why we want to force people to pledge to do something when, look, we don't know who the Republican nominee is going to be. And let's say that someone wants to walk in today and support whoever it may be, right? Maybe it's Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, whoever it is in that Republican primary. But they decide that, in the general election I want to support somebody else. They're signing a piece of paper saying they're not going to do that. I think you also have some real issues by forcing people to declare something before they walk in and make their decision of who they vote for. Again, if they want to change the process, that's perfectly fine. But what has happened now, and candidly what has happened is the Republican Party of Virginia submitted language to the State Board of Election, who then changed the language, and the Republican Party of Virginia wasn't aware of that change. So we've asked them to come back to us with what the final language is going to be. And as of right now, nobody knows what that final language is going to be. But what I don't fundamentally understand is why you want to force people to have an extra step to voting. I thought we want to be more inclusive. And here's the problem. If this document goes out and you have an absentee ballot request and you don't sign that and return it with your absentee ballot, your vote would literally not count in this election. And I don't understand why any state wants less people participating than more. What we know is that this election, with Donald Trump in it, has had the highest results when it comes to watching the debates, because people are excited. Let's bring everybody in. Let's not force people to do something extra before they have to go vote. Let's give everyone the opportunity to participate in the process for a change, because people are finally excited and they want to do it.
Look, the Republican Party of Virginia instituted this for one reason, okay? And that is to stop Trump people from showing up on Super Tuesday. I'm going to call it out like it is, like I did in my column the other day. we can spin this thing and talk about, oh, they just want to be sure Republicans are voting in their primary. At the end of the day, it's the very independents and conservative Democrats that make up a big piece of Trump backers that the Republicans will need in November to win the state. Why you would do anything to suppress that is egregious, and it just doesn't make any sense at all. And I think that's why they have it in there. The other problem is, what happens if somebody shows up, which will happen all over the state, they ask for a Republican ballot, and the poll worker says you have to sign this document. Some people just are not comfortable signing anything.
Well, that's exactly right. So what do you got? You got to turn these people. You got to disenfranchise these people.
Go home.
What if somebody who is, a well-known Democrat, and I don't, whoever that person is, even though it's not a party registration, say a well-known Democrat says, I want to support Trump because of his economic positions, because I'm sick of what's going on with China, and because I'm so concerned that our deficit's so out of control that I want to stop ISIS. Oh, you have to sign this. They're not going to sign that document.
They're not going to sign it.
And they're going to turn around and they're going to walk away. That's not fair.
It absolutely doesn't make any sense. And that's the thing. The other problem you have is some poll workers might acquiesce and say, we can take the ballot anyway, and others do not. And the person has to go home. And then so now it's a complete mess. I mean, how this is so illogical. But the thing is, at the end of the day, it's instituted and it's aimed at stopping one candidate. And my position is, if you prefer an alternative to Mr. Trump, you've got 13 others, right?
Well,
it's as simple as that.
John, here's the other problem. We're now on Christmas Eve. Ballots are going out and being printed in the next 2 weeks to 15 days, right? So we don't even know what the process is yet. The state doesn't know what the process is yet. The Republican Party of Virginia doesn't know what the process is. Do we think that these guys over the next 2 weeks are going to have the ability to button this whole thing up, get the ballots printed, send them out, and make sure that this is implemented uniformly across the entire Commonwealth? There's no chance. I have zero faith that that's going to happen.
The whole thing is absolutely outrageous. Look, I've got a couple more minutes. We're with National Donald Trump for President campaign manager Corey Lewandowski. I want to get to the fact that 250,000 additional HB2 visas were put in this omnibus bill. Basically, Paul Ryan is saying, hey, we need to get foreign workers in because Americans don't want these jobs. We've got effective 25% unemployment. I mean, all this is going to do is take jobs away from American workers and also depress wages, and it gets slipped in the middle of the evening. How does that make any sense?
Again, everything that is wrong with Washington we see in this omnibus bill. What we see is backroom deals, people who don't have our best interests in heart, right? Our giant deficit being ballooned even further with no stopping. And we think that importing, the Washington, D.C. establishment thinks that importing foreign workers to take jobs away from American citizens is the right thing to do. This is everything that is fundamentally wrong with our country right now. Mr. Trump has said it. It's very clear. We're being led by stupid people. What we need is some common sense leadership. You talk about it every day. We need someone who actually has business experience to say, look, the people in our country want to work. Let's give jobs to the people who live here first. Let's give the opportunities to the people who live here. Let's make sure that our people are actually employed. Let's stop worrying about people who are living overseas and trying to bring them in to take jobs away from the hardworking Americans that live here every single day that are having a hard enough time. I don't understand how people think that bringing in foreign workers is a good idea when we should be employing the people in America first.
Well, and
it's a fundamental disconnect.
It is, and the thing is, it got slipped into the omnibus at the final hour, so it was not even open for debate. That is what is just driving people bananas about this. I got 2 minutes. Your Muslim ban. Now we're finding out that this fiance came over, that these two people may not have even ever met. What's the deal with this?
So the fiancée comes over, perpetrates the worst terrorist attack since 9/11. She comes over on a K-1 visa, which is a spousal visa, passes a couple background checks through the State Department, of which, potentially were done on the telephone, because I understand that most of these background checks for people coming in are done on the telephone, not even face-to-face. They never looked at her social media account where she was going out and practicing basically jihad on social media. These two individuals never meet. Our government is so fundamentally broken right now. We can't tell when a terrorist is coming into our country, and we think that bringing additional refugees in and people to come in on these visas to work over here are a good thing. Let's put a hold on the process. Let's just slow it down a little bit. Let's take a better look at who's coming into our country. Let's look at it and say, guys, if we can't do it properly, let's not do it at all for a small period of time, 90 days, 120 days, whatever that may be, because one person coming into our country who is killing Americans is one person too many. And if our government can't protect our people, then we have a fundamental flaw in the system, and we need to do something to radically change it. The number one job of our government is to protect the American people. And if we can't do that, because we don't have the resources to do a background check on a person coming to our country who has never been vetted, we haven't looked at their social media accounts, and has never met the individual that they're supposedly coming to marry, and then come in and kill 14 people in San Bernardino. We know more about this woman and her husband now after they killed 14 people than the U.S. government even knew before they let them into our country. It's wrong. The system is broken. We need to fix it. And I don't think letting more people in is the solution right now.
That's going to be the final word. Merry Christmas, Corey Lewandowski, National Campaign Manager, Donald Trump for President. Want more info? DonaldJTrump.com.